Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Brian's Logic, 10th Man, Eli, Refracted Curvature, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Morning, morning.
Hello.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Let's see if we can get a bit more enthusiasm out of Discord, as I've literally heard nothing from them.
Discord, wake the freak up!
Somebody who's been kidnapped, muffled, gagged. That's what I heard.
Hello, hello.
There we go.
Morning, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you, Melby. Thank you, Rams. Much obliged. Let's get our way through housekeeping. Hey, Owen.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to have you. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That would be a horizon, formerly known as Earth curve.
Terrestrial refracted. We could get it, but yeah, when we do,
Shut up! You need R for that.
Yeah, but to get that R, you can assume terrestrial refraction is kind of displacing it away from that presumed ball shape. But yeah, it's paradoxical. That's the only thing they got. Right? It's
Then they
better
got nothing.
than just admitting they don't have anything ever. So
Well,
they'd
if it's
rather just run
paradoxical,
into
they
a
got
paradox
nothing.
ditch than just admit, no, we can't get it.
A fallacy's better than nothing, eh?
Yeah.
If we could time travel, we could ask Albaroni.
What was that about Albaroni?
If we could time travel, which is a concept, then we could ask Albaroni.
Ask him about his measurement to a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. We've debunked that with the Black Swan, so don't really know what we'd ask him. Why did you assume the horizon? Go on.
Why would we have to time travel? We can just go do it. We can go on top of a mountain, do it. 2 hours later, do it. 3 hours later, oh, the fog came in. That's all I see. So everything changes, right, Brian?
But if you could talk to them.
If you go out. Yeah, if you go out there at different times, different of a day or different days, you know, you get different size radiuses, or radii, I should say. Sorry. You know, so it can be any size. It can be any.
Sorry.
Size. Depends on when you go there.
What are we using to get these different size radiuses? Exactly.
Well, we're using a dip angle to a refracted horizon. Not really, just an apparent one.
But Albaroni didn't do that, though. He had no conception of terrestrial refraction. He simply tried to measure it, was off several degrees. He's basically failed in what he tried, but then the body of science into the future just accepted, like, no, it is a success because of terrestrial refraction. He didn't know it was there, right? But if you'd ask Al, he would say, yeah, sorry, it's
Did he use
failure.
a sextant to determine for the.
Possibly. I mean, he got a dip angle measurement, so potentially. Don't see why not.
They said an astrolabe, which is similar, so yes.
There you go.
Basically the answer.
Astrolabe.
He would have to do a horizon dip correction anyway, so that would kind of caused the problem.
Careful.
But he didn't do any of that.
No. He didn't do a dip angle correction. He did a dip angle measurement. That's crucial. That measurement to the physical.
I'm saying he would have had to. He would have had to. Not what he did do. He would have had to if he was going to be using the tool correctly.
Yeah. What you're saying is to put you on the deck on the flat plane to get your first angle measurement, you correct for how high above the plane you are, right? Because that's going to skew your angle measurement. And you're saying he would have to adjust for that, but then he'd have nothing to measure because that adjustment is the very thing that he's presupposing as a physical sphere edge horizon that he's going to get his dip angle measurement from.
But yeah, I mean, what he actually did was pre-assume that a geometric and an astronomical horizon existed, and he also pre-assumed the radius he was supposed to be proving or measuring in the first place, because he had the maths before he ever started. So he already knew what the radius was going to be before he started.
And there's also another problem too.
He had to use the center of the globe to do it. Go on, John.
I was going to say there's another problem because terrestrial refraction was always meant to loom things with respect to the horizon. This whole moving the horizon with it is new.
Well, it's paradoxical. Arwin, you there? So it's a paradox that coincidentally was named after Arwin at one stage, but I'm going to rename it the Nathan paradox just because he's not replying. The Arwinian paradox. You can't refract the horizon with terrestrial refraction, as the terrestrial refraction is based on an R value, which is the tangent point horizon in the maths. So if you move your tangent point, it's no longer a tangent point, and therefore no longer are you capable of performing the geometry. You can't move the refracted R value with itself before you've even measured it. It's a paradox.
Yeah, and he also got an angle from the center of a globe that he already knew the radius of. That's a bit of a paradox as well, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry.
Nathan, it's the same trick with Eratosthenes. He pre-assumed he lived on the globe, just like Albaroni did. And so when the shadow in Alexandria showed 7 degrees, he applied it to a surface that curved that caused the shadow to be 7 degrees. He didn't say, I'm on a flat plane and the angle of the sun hitting the tower or that vertical pole is causing the shadow because the sun's in a different location on the flat plane, showing an angle like divergent rays would. So both of them pre-assumed they live on the ball, just like Brian said. Both of them pre-assumed the radius, and they just said, okay, so Eratosthenes said the shadow is caused by the curvature of Earth, and Albaroni said, okay, that horizon there in my dip, that is the geometric horizon. After that, it starts curving away, and it will block the bottom of boats and things. They're both wrong because they assumed everything.
Well, basically, they both pre-assumed 2 particular things, one thing each that was not real. So for Eratosthenes, if he really, because I don't know if he really did this, but if he really did pre-assume that sun rays were sun rays were parallel, that's what he had to do to get. He had to pre-assume that there was parallel rays coming from the sun to allow him to have the curve. Other than that, all he did was measure basically a portion of a flat diameter, because that's all he could have done. With the sun, if he used the real actual sun and the divergent rays that really come from it. Albaroni, he pre-assumed that the horizon was geometric. He also pre-assumed there's an astronomical horizon, but just if you want to pick one thing from each, Eratosthenes supposedly pre-assumed that sun rays were parallel, and Albaroni supposedly pre-assumed that the horizon was geometric.
They both
Perfect.
assumed a sphere.
That's even-
Just to add that in, they both assumed a sphere in the first instance.
Correct.
Yeah.
See, like
Oh,
the whole thing.
Go on, John.
The whole thing about the sextant proof is you really have to be up on your game, because a lot of the linguistic information out there will use things like the real sun, and objects, uses words like that that aren't really, it lends credence to the globe, even though it's just a word. You're trying to use to describe something intangible, and it's just completely covered in that language. The sextant is.
It is, but it doesn't matter, because reality shows the sun is not casting parallel rays. I mean, that's the death. The quickest death is they need the sunlight to come in parallel. And guess what? It doesn't, no matter what. I mean, reality will show you that. Now, if you want to pretend it's coming in parallel, then you can go and do all the things they're doing, but it's not coming in parallel. It's coming in divergent. Everyone knows this. Just go to Google, type in parallel sun rays, see how many pictures you get. But go on and say divergent corpuscular rays, and you go on page after page after page, because that's what everyone photographs.
Well, the parallel sun rays is something they need for a sun with an 860 or 860,000 mile diameter, or whatever the hell it is, at 93 million miles away. They need parallel sun rays for that. That's why they pre-assume parallel sun rays, because it's a heliocentric model. So they're believing there's this monstrous sun that's 93 million miles away, and we have parallel sun rays, basically because we're so small, the sun is so big, that it's so big that even at 93 million miles away, the inverse square law of light hasn't even started happening yet. So they're basically putting you on a little tiny globe Earth next to a monstrous sun, and there is no inverse square law of light after happening, simply because you're on this little thing next to this big huge thing. Just like having your eyeball next to a light bulb. Because that's the way every diagram they show you, they don't show you a big distance. They claim a distance, but every diagram they ever show you, they always show you, okay, let's say not the scale on it, but it's the scale for their imagination, because they have to believe that you're right next to this monstrous sun. So you don't see any divergence of light, because you're just seeing this big direct light in your face. But if you walk away from that light bulb, you will see that the light bulb will not have parallel rays. Not that rays exist, but you know what I mean? Light.
Somebody's saying they'll only share the show if they get a distance to the sun. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Please share the show.
Can I just add a point to what 10th was saying? Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there.
Yeah, go ahead.
With that parallel lines, the sun rays coming in divergent, how does that sort of balance with that we see train tracks converging in the distance, but we know that they're parallel? So there is still an optical phenomenon that can make parallel lines appear to be diverging, even if I guess we can't prove whether they are or aren't, but there's still an optical phenomenon like the convergence point, the vanishing point. Even parallel lines will appear to be diverging from that point outward.
You've answered your own question. Number one, you can't prove it. Well, it's in your description by definition, parallel. Right, that's got a meaning. So if you say they're parallel, well, we can't prove they're not. Well, you've just defined them as being parallel. You're saying, well, they appear to converge. Yeah, they do appear to converge. Those parallel lines.
Hang on. I'd like to answer that since he addressed it to me.
Go ahead, sorry.
I asked Bible literist Paula, Level Up, to give her opinion on this, and she did a fine job. Vertical things, this is Paula, and I'm quoting her. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally, they get closer together. I'll repeat that. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally they get closer together. A line of poles, walls, and trees does both horizontal and vertical as the distance from your eye increases. However, vertical crepuscular rays are not changing distance from your eye. Also, the crepuscular ray converge at the top rather than the bottom or center. So if you ever see footage of crepuscular rays moving over a city, time lapse, you can see it. It's not disappearing to a vanishing point. It's vertical. It's not like the railroad tracks going on forever.
Well,
and they converge to the light source, actually. And you'd have to be on your back, looking straight up for it to be railroad tracks, is what I'm trying to say.
Sorry, thanks. I thought you were finished hoist. That's why I went to come in.
No, it's okay. I'm done now.
Apologies. No, there's a big difference. The one looking at railroad tracks is like a 2D type observation. Looking at the sun is like a 3D observation, because you can see the point where they all converge. You can't see the vanishing point of where the train tracks converge. If you rise higher, the train tracks will still converge. They just converge at a different distance. Whereas with the sun, you can rise higher, but the convergence point won't change. You know what I mean? Even though you can also watch the sun moving. So you can see the point where they all converge. You can rise as high up as you want, and you will still see the same point of convergence. That won't change. All will change is your distance from the ground. So it's not the same thing. I mean, I don't know what the sun is, right? It appears to be spherical, right? But I don't know what it is. Now, in the heliocentric belief, it is spherical, right? So the fact that their sun is spherical means that then claiming there's parallel rays coming from the sun, right? Besides the fact that they try and put you next to the sun on a small little globe, the fact that they're claiming parallel rays is absolutely ludicrous, because a spherical light can never have parallel rays, because everything is, all the light, let's say that's coming from that sphere or shape, like a light bulb, goes in all directions.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Nathan, I'm posting as soon as it lets me.
Morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate.
Okay. Hang on, I gotta do this.
Yo.
The parallel thing, I don't think that's fully their claim. I think they're claiming like a 0.5 divergence that's almost parallel.
Yeah, but
almost parallel?
Yeah, that's the thing.
What's that talking about?
Mm-hmm. Parallel sun rays. This 0.5 thing, that's a mathematical thing. When they want to show you a depiction of the light from their sun, they'll show you all parallel rays. There'll be no convergence in any diagram or anything else. So this 0.5 thing is only like a kind of a get-out clause for them. Do you know, that kind of way? That's all it is. It doesn't mean anything. I've heard that being stated a load of times. So almost parallel is not parallel. And almost parallel changes everything mathematically for them, but they don't really realize that.
Nathan, I'm going to post it. I had to reboot my phone, and I'll let you know.
Okay.
I got a perfect picture for this. But what Brian is saying is true. They say, if you look at what they say about Eratosthenes, he assumed the Earth's a sphere and light because of a vast distance away is coming in parallel. That's why in the Nautical Almanac, all the predetermined readings are coming from the center of the Earth. Okay, it's all pre-calculated because light is assumed to come in parallel. You can't get that central angle to give the same corresponding angle on the curved surface if it wasn't. And so they play so many games with you. So yeah, they do assume it's parallel. Forget that 0.5 crap.
Yeah, and what's not 0.5, let's just say, across from the equator to the north and south of their globe? What would 0.5 end up being? Would it be parallel? No, because it's not parallel. So they're claiming parallel, and they're also claiming it's not really parallel. It's another contradiction of a model that's full of contradictions.
Well, I think the 0.5. I think the 0.5 has to represent the apparent size of the sun and like the distance across, so that one ray on the right side of the sun wouldn't be parallel with a ray on the left side of the sun. But this is all assuming a geometric horizon, and we live on a sphere, and the sun's 93 million miles away, or a really far distance.
So
Adam said it the best. Adam said when a photon leaves a round sun, round-shaped sun, it's moving in all directions.
What John just said of your claim is them claiming that they only actually have an angular size measurement of the sun. That's like an admission, isn't it, when you think about it? Because they're using the angular size of the sun within that, are they not? Because I've heard them do this before. I've had that argument with Rumpus briefly before. You know, their admission is they only actually have an angular size like everyone else.
Okay. All right, Nathan. First one's coming over.
Again?
First one's coming over, first picture. Okay, you can see that picture. That's taken from the sky. You're not even on the Earth for that picture, right?
No, it's not loaded yet. Just told them.
All right, you tell me when it is. I'm sending another one as well.
Okay, I've got it. It's a sun above the clouds sort of thing. Is that the one?
Where's the photograph being taken from?
Above the clouds. Didn't I just say that?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying to the audience. Okay, this isn't the guy on the Earth. This is a guy in the air taking the picture, right? Somewhere up high. And you can see the vertical rays. Second one came over.
Hasn't worked yet. Oh, there we go. Yep.
All right, so this one basically, if you're lying on your back, looking straight up, they're converging to the sun. They're coming divergent and they're converging back to the source. If it was parallel, it wouldn't be doing that. The sun's not 93 million miles away. That's the point.
Well, if we had parallel rays from a monstrous sun, and the sun was so big that we ended up with parallel rays, then any side of a globe that would be turned towards that sun, right, and these rays are coming from 93 million miles away, any side would be fully lit from top to bottom. Like, there would be no difference in a couple of thousand miles. The whole lot on any side that's tilted towards the globe or towards the sun would be lit from top to bottom. So what would happen in their model is there would be summertime in the southern summer and winter time in the northern summer for everywhere. You know, if you want to see it that way, because they all they try and claim it's to do with angle. There is no angle. It's parallel rays that's coming. Like, parallel rays suggest, right? They claim, actually, by claiming parallel rays, you're claiming that the sun's light hasn't even started, that the infrared spiral of light hasn't even affected the light coming to the globe Earth yet. So that means the whole one, whatever side is in daylight, the whole lot of that will be in equal daylight. There will be no part of the Arctic that will be dark in the northern summer or northern winter or anything like that. There won't be that. There'll be a summer in December or January, and there'll be a winter in June, July. You know, that's the way it'll be. There is no other way for that to work.
Nathan, I got one last picture for you, and I'll be done. Let me know when you got it up.
Yep. Oh, baby. Whose is that? Who made that sound? He was cute, whoever it was.
All right, so
That was mine, sorry.
good one. So this last picture here, as the sun is setting or rising, I don't know, but the whole point is you see the rays that are coming across the sky towards the top of the picture, but then you see the rays below the sun going divergent. This happens because the photons leaving the sun go in all directions. And what the ballers do is they take a picture of a very small part of those rays that are coming to the top of the picture. And they say, see, it's parallel. And then when you back away and show the whole picture like we see here, oh my gosh, they're converging. They're coming from the sun and diverging. And at the same time, they're diverging straight down and sideways in this picture. Because, as Adam said, a photon leaving the sun, which is a round body, or whatever it is, but it's round, circular, is going to move in all directions. It's not going to be parallel. And it's right here. And so what they'll do is they'll cheat, and they'll take a picture and crop out a section there on the top of the blue sky and say, see, it's parallel. And you say, well, let me see the whole picture. Oh, well, why is it converging back to the sun? And why is there the vertical divergent rays as well in this picture? They just lie.
Yeah, that's all they ever do.
I think
Yeah,
I think that was the best. The best answer is that horizontal versus vertical divergence. The vertical would remain parallel, as you said, and we still see the vertical diverging. So,
well, you wouldn't
Yeah,
have
that's
a 3D.
kudos to, well,
Sorry.
that's kudos to Paula at Bible Literist and Level Up. Thank you, Paula.
You wouldn't have any 3D. You wouldn't be able to assert. Sorry.
You're
You wouldn't be able to assert. I coughed. I had to go on mute for a second. You wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to identify a source with parallel. You know what I mean? You like. I put it this way: what is the cause of heat? I'm asking John this if he's available. He may not because he's the kids. But what is the cause of heat on the globe model?
Radiation from the sun.
Yeah. So what heats up the Earth?
excitation.
Yeah, but what's heating the Earth? Is it the sun's light onto the surface of the Earth?
Yes.
Yes, it's the energy causing excitation in the molecules, and then that excitation is registered as heat.
Yeah, but officially what causes heat on the Earth? It's the sun's light onto the Earth, heating the Earth. This is what they say, heating the Earth's surface, and the Earth's surface then in turn heats the gases, right? This is the claim, right? So if you're 3 million miles further, right, from these rays, these parallel rays that are hitting all of the Earth equally, because they're parallel, so that means they have to be hitting the Earth equally at all points. It's not as if they just hit one section, they have to be able to hit it all equally. So if you're 3 million miles further away from that, then that means you have to be colder, because you're further from the source of the heat. Or what is causing the heat, let's just say. So,
What do you mean? You don't ever walk away from your oven and it feels hotter?
Yeah.
That's literally what they're telling you.
Yeah.
You turn to an angle, and then you get hotter when you stand near your oven.
Yeah.
Yeah, angles create heat, yeah, in their belief. Yeah. In their claim, angles create heat. Because you're hot.
So they'll say the words. So they'll say the words, the sun's atmosphere is hotter than the sun's surface. Which, I mean, it's all gas, so beats me. Don't ask me.
Well, it's a second law of thermodynamics violation. This has been covered a couple of times on a few of Quantum Eraser's presentations. So he uses an analogy. You buy a bonfire, and you go, oh, it's a bit hot. I'm just going to step back a few steps. So you step back 10 feet, and because you've moved away from it, you spontaneously combust.
No! It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. No!
Yeah, proximity to heat source. You know, in the real world, that matters.
You want me to
What
put?
about- I mean, that
What
makes
about
sense. That
parallel
makes sense
shadows?
when, in January, when there's, 6 feet of snow on the ground, that's when we're closest to the sun in New York, But that's absolutely makes sense.
But what about parallel? Actually, no, I'm gonna let that point stand. No, that's a pretty good point.
Right, 10th. I've got Paula's comment up. Did you want to read it? And then I haven't read it. I just stuck it straight up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And I think was it who was it the one that responded? Eric? Was it Eric who responded to it? I can't remember.
I don't know the context. Don't lean on me for it.
All right, no problem. Anyway, this is the actual text she sent me. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally they get closer together. A line of poles, walls, trees does both horizontal and vertical as the distance from your eye increases. However, vertical corpuscular rays are not changing distance from your eye. Also, the corpuscular rays converge at the top rather than the bottom or center.
Well, could I just say,
But I just
at the base.
I just want to challenge
of-
that.
Hold
in
on,
terms
Brian.
of-
That was directed towards Eric. Can I just get a
sorry.
response from him? Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
sorry, it's solar speed.
Sorry, I never asked
Sorry.
any-
It
I
wasn't
never
even
asked
Eric. Well, then no. Go ahead, Brian.
That's solar.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to state, if you were in, let's say, where Eli is, a best example in the world, Manhattan, and Eli stands at the base of a skyscraper and looks straight up, will the skyscrapers at either side of the skyscraper, let's say a horizontal skyscraper, will the lines appear to go in the way, or will they appear to go out the way if you're looking up at a skyscraper?
Oh, that's a new one. In the way. Oh, I love it. Oh, I've got a slight tingle.
Yeah, will they go in the way or out the way? The lines at the side of the lines of the skyscraper at the side you're looking up, will they appear to go out or in the way? Now remember, the top of that skyscraper has a diameter much wider than you. So if the lines are going out the way as you look up, and if you look at animation, they always show it that way. Animation shows it that way because that's what we see with perspective, isn't it? Then it would be impossible if there was parallel sun rays, then they would appear to all be meeting off out away from us, not meeting at a point inward. You understand what I mean?
Yes. They claim they're running parallel to us, and they're not. They wouldn't look the way they were if they did.
Yeah, if you take like the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, they had lines of steel running right up through them. Any photographs that are seen, if anyone remembers seeing photographs of people taking photographs from the base of that, any of those two towers, straight up, the lines went out the way. But they weren't, they were in reality parallel.
Okay, have we done this enough? Because we're going to forgo the rest of the housekeeping so we can discuss something that I've literally titled the live show, which is the science of Glen. So is there anything else anyone wants to get out of the way with a desperate urgency before I move on to this?
Just one thing.
Okay.
In terms of the definition that 10th wrote, when we talk about on the vertical height, it's getting shorter, but on the horizontal height, it's getting closer together. I see those as almost the same phenomenon, that there's a shortening occurring. So whether they're getting closer together or the two ends of the pole are getting closer together, it's technically still a convergence occurring on both the horizontal and the vertical. Because if that pole was centered on your field of view, it would get equally distant or it would get shorter on equal ends until eventually it meets the vanishing point.
I'm not sure if I follow, but I want to comment in case I heard it the way my ears picked up on it.
Okay, keep it
When
brief.
I look at, yeah, I will. When I look at divergent rays, they don't vanish into the horizon. They're right in front of me, and the sun is moving. And you could, in the time-lapse photography, if you go time-lapse corpuscular rays, you'll see it there. It's not the horizontal; it's more of a vertical, and it's right there in front of you. And so you'd have to be lying on your back and then looking at it straight up to see it converge back to the sun. And that would resemble the horizontal. So since they're coming in vertically, it's not the same as train tracks going horizontally into the horizon, vanishing at a point because of perspective. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying, in terms of that definition that you read, if the vertical is getting shorter, but the horizontal is getting closer together, I see those as the same. They're both approaching a convergence point eventually. But the divergent rays that are vertical from the sun, like how you just described it, that doesn't almost fit with the same idea of poles shrinking into a vanishing point.
Any chance someone can read out Paula's comment? If not, I will. No, I see the distinction as the horizontal does not change height. Not sure if that's clearer. Thank you very much, Paula. Level up in the chat in case anyone wants to know who Paula is. Okay, is that it? Have we rounded that out enough? I'll take that as a yes. Excellent. So, in the pre-show we discussed this a little tiny bit, not much, but I preemptively sent a slightly edited down version of this video. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask a few things of my subscriber base. So this guy's channel is called Spectra Sound Studios, and I want you to go and subscribe today. If you do subscribe, let him know. Say, hey Glenn, Nathan Oakley sent me, love your channel. And before we get into the science of Glen, I'm going to say a few things before we do. The first is that I agree with what he is saying. In other words, what he's putting down, I am definitely picking up, with the exception of his utilization of the scientific method. Now, it's unfortunate for Glenn, but I've been looking for this for a while. So I've had a few that came close where there was a guy that was doing it with tyres. That's why I've mentioned tyres a few times, in case anyone was wondering. It's like there was a dude whose name won't get mentioned, not going to get named and shamed on this occasion because it's Glenn that's getting it in the neck. Sorry, Glenn. I love you, man. Also, fuck you, Glenn. Right? So Glenn has taken a very good test to show that valves, what we call valves in the UK, you call tubes in the States, don't make a difference to amplification when you're micing up guitars and so on and so forth. So that's the general sentiment of what he's trying to put down so his audience understands where to not waste their money. And I completely agree with that sentiment. The problem is that he's become, or is going to be about to become, my example of how science has been hijacked by normies, and the understanding is used to lend credence to just so stories, even if they're true. In this case, I agree with the actual story that's being told and the methodology that's used. Now, you're going to hear certain terms that we're going to stop and potentially discuss. I will leave all of your lines open, so if you can mute just while it's playing, if you do feel the need to, you must speak up, then you can. That's why I'll leave all your lines open so you can interrupt. But I'd prefer you were just on mute, just so we don't have audio chaos while it's playing. It's about 3 and a bit minutes long. Like I say, I'll probably interject at various different stages as well. But I want to give the preamble that, number one, I like this guy. So under no circumstances, go and give the guy shit. I don't want that to be why this is happening. He's just unfortunate enough to be in a position where he's concisely summarised what he describes as the scientific method, and then he does what is brilliant for me because it's legitimate in terms of what it's doing. So I'm not actually disagreeing with him in terms of what he's putting down. So hopefully if you went and listened to this video, you'd go, okay, I actually agree with you. Great. But doesn't make what he says legitimate in terms of the scientific method, which is what we focus on here, coincidentally. Hence, that's why Glenn's landed himself in this position. Now, I'll also say that I have left him a fair few comments in the last few days, and I know this guy is very heavily focused on comments. So therefore, hopefully he's already at least mildly aware that, given that he's probably got thousands of comments a day, maybe not, but at least mildly aware that, I'm going to be doing something. And then when I saw this, I was like, this is just what I need, Glenn. Thank you very much. Brilliant. None of what you do here is science. So, I'm going to be using you as an example on my show. I doubt he's got that. He's probably asleep when I've sent it. But nevertheless, like I say, the reason I'm giving all these disclaimers is because I like the guy. I agree with what he's saying. And I'm just using him as an example how normies will accept when astrophysicists do the same thing, because it's basically brainwashed into us all that you lend credence when you've got words like null, or experiment, or you just claim you're doing the entirety of the scientific method when you're not doing any such thing. So, if everyone's a moot, we'll, without further ado, play this video through. Like I say, feel free to interject if there's something that you must pipe up about. So at this stage, are we all clear that the guy's claiming, in no uncertain terms, that he's going to be using the scientific method? We all on board so far with what's been claimed? Yes, Nathan, we all totally get why you're using this guy.
I'm on board. I'm on board.
Yep.
I'm on board.
Okie dokie, we'll play on. Okay, so any comments so far?
I'm like in and out because I'm at work and I'm trying to pay attention. But so this guy, he's trying to figure out something with his amp, but you said he's using the scientific method. Is he asserting this is science? I'm slightly confused.
Yes, correct. So far, what has happened is he has claims that valves make amps sound better. That's the claim by guitarists. So he's saying, right, we're going to settle this by using something that's empirical. That would be the scientific method. So let's shut you up once and for all. We're going to science this. Here's what the scientific method is. He threw it up on screen.
Oh, okay.
Well, what I see right away is that the amplifier in tubes is not a natural thing in the world that I find. It's a man-made thing, so it has to be caused because of that. So it doesn't fall into the natural world in the scientific method for cause and effect.
Perfect.
The sound is the phenomenon, not...
Whether it sounds better or not is a subjective thing, isn't it? I mean...
That's funny. I went through the forest the other day, and I didn't see an amp or tubes in nature.
Okay, so tense
sound. You hear sound all the time.
Hold on.
Yeah, but
yes,
not
you
through
hear
amps and tubes.
We're not trying to establish the cause of sound, though, are we? So when you say we hear sound all the time, you're what, going to juxtapose the fact that we hear sound and make that the dependent variable? Are we trying to figure out the cause of sound if sound is the dependent variable? I wanted to get to this afterwards, actually, John. I want to start with 10th. Is that okay? Can you hold that thought?
Yeah, that's fine.
So 10th was first, and 10th identified correctly the first problem that we've got here when we're talking about science. So go ahead, 10th, reiterate it again, if you would.
Yeah, it's like anything man-made is going to have some kind of effect, but it's man-made. We already know why the effect exists because man made it. Now, if you're going to study the natural world and see a phenomena and a dependent variable that's naturally in the world, and you say, well, I wonder why that is. Well, it's not man-made. It's in nature. And then you're going to do the scientific method on that to see the cause of that effect. I mean, that's what I've been taught. That's what I've been reading from all the QE's posts.
Perfect. So in his description of the scientific method, the first thing it says is ask a question, which is incorrect, because you can ask a question about whether or not you're going to have roast chicken tonight, and that won't fall into the scientific method. However, his step 3 on his list was formulate hypothesis. Well, what's a hypothesis? In science, it's a prediction. The prediction of a cause and effect relationship that you're trying to figure out. Well, what's the effect? Well, it's something that you observe in nature. That'd be not man-made devices. You already know what the cause is. Man made them. So there's no cause and effect relationships, IV-DB relationships in science when it comes to man-made things. You already know what the cause of them is. That'll be a man making them. Now, again, I'll stress at this point that lending validity via measurements, and in this case null, which I think I might have actually just played over, we'll see what he says next, is perfectly acceptable. Nothing wrong with doing that. But a null, in scientific terms, is the antithesis of your cause and effect relationship predicted in the alternative hypothesis. If A, then B, alternative hypothesis. If A, not B, null hypothesis. I'm getting ahead of myself. John, go ahead. If you can make your point again, and then we can move on to nulls. Where? Clearly not. We'll move on with this and we'll come back to John's point because it does follow nicely with the null point, which is going to be made in a moment. Okay, so are we all clear? He gave a very good description of what a null test is. Does everybody understand what his null test is? Yeah, we all understand. It was really clear. Okay, fine. So what you're going to do is you're going to take two signals of information. You're going to invert one of them and then drop them on top of each other. Now, anything that's left over between those two signals doesn't null. It's residual, it's left over. You can then hear it played through after they've been nulled, and that's the difference that you're left with. Now, if something nulls perfectly, you get silence at the end of that process, showing that there's no difference in those two signals, because they null each other out. When you invert one of them, it cancels the other. Anything that's not cancelled means it's not in perfectly mirror image of the other. That's what a null test does. Now, that is very different to a null in the hypothesis as labelled in his scientific method. A scientific method also has a null as part of the hypothesis. If A, presumed cause of an effect you're studying, not B, it doesn't cause the effect you're studying, that's a null in a hypothesis. A supposition of cause yet to be validated, or scientific prediction, aka hypothesis. So a null, inverting signals, running them together to see what's left over or is a residual signal, is not the same as a null in a scientific prediction, aka hypothesis. Anything anybody wants to add at this stage?
Well, wouldn't that take the subjective, his nullification of the sound waves, wouldn't that take the subjectivity out of the clarity of what he's testing?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with doing a null test. In fact, I highly commend him. So many engineers that talk so much bullshit based on what they're listening to with their auditory memory of about 3 seconds. Null test, there it is. That's what's residual. Very good. Love it. Love it, Glenn. Absolutely wicked. Wish more people did null tests. Not the same as a null in a scientific prediction, though.
Right, like I said, I don't think he knew what he was doing. I don't think he's doing. It's hard to say. I think he hit a straight blow with a bent stick, is what I believe.
On the contrary, I think he knows exactly what he's doing and is an extremely experienced, skilled engineer who understands the principles of sound enough to know when you can show, empirically, a difference by way of a null test and the residual left over when you invert a signal. I think that's genius. I wish more did it. But it's not science. That's the point I'm making.
It's just not science.
Exactly.
Well,
I was going to say, like, it sounds like the technique he's using, the method he's using, like, from what I hear, like, he's got his variables, he knows what he's trying to do. Like, I don't see anything wrong with the method except for the fact that he's asserting this is science. That's the only thing I'm like, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, inverting a signal and measuring the residual is a measurement. It's maths. Nothing wrong with maths. Brilliant. Love it, Glenn. It's just not science.
This is just calibration.
Yeah. Well, you could call it calibration. It's null testing, but regardless of the title it gets, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's good. Why I've picked this, it's brilliant because I can praise the guy all day long about what he's doing with audio, because seldom do you see it. There's so many bullshitting audio reviewers out there that will spend all day describing how they sound when they've changed something and done it a day later, and it's like, you could move your head 2 inches and change the sound. Show me an actual measurement. Show me a null test. And they don't do it. They just bullshit about what they're talking about. Now, the reason this is a good example is because he's actually got credence to lend to what he says, but he's over-egged the pudding. He's added credence with the words of science, even throwing up the scientific method when it wasn't required. He didn't need to add that credence to what he did. He was already leagues ahead of everybody else in that regard, I can absolutely assure you. I've watched enough of these types of videos to know this guy's top of his game. So, no, he's perfectly good and well served in what he's doing, and I'm grateful that he does. Sets the example, in fact. He's just over-egged the pudding. Like I say, didn't need to claim it was science. just because it's got some of the words in there, right? Variables, null. Ooh, it sounds a lot like science, doesn't it? Any more? We're going to continue. There's a little bit more.
Well, it's like, yeah, when you hear people talk about something's been scientifically tested or something will be marketed as scientifically tested, and it's the same sort of thing.
Exactly. We're having the wool pulled over our eyes in many different respects, and through ignorance, many people will basically validate that bullshit process by doing it themselves to lend credence to their own bullshit. Now, in this case, this guy's bullshit's actually perfectly valid bullshit. It's good. There's nothing. He's not polishing up turds when he says what he says. He's actually done this stuff, right? So there was no need to add this extra credence. Useful for me, because I don't have to put him down and say what he's saying is wrong, because he's, I don't know, punting smoke and mirrors cables or whatever, with no actual measurements to back them. So far from it, I can say, no, good job, keep it up, while saying, nah, but it's not science. Anyway.
Very little. And that becomes quite apparent when we run the null test. Tell you what, let's run a clip with 3 different sets of tubes in it and see what happens.
Okay, doke, so that's pretty much it. So hopefully we're all on top of why this has been used, why Glen. Shout out to you, my friend. I will stick a link in the comment section and pin it once this live stream's over, and advise people again to go and subscribe. If you do go and subscribe to Spectra Studios, please let him know that I sent you. Say, Nathan Oakley sent me, because hopefully he'll then check this out. And I think he's a good guy. I don't want anybody to bash him in any way, shape or sound. So if you do go and visit Spectra Sound Studios, all one word, SPECTRESOUND check him out. Say, Glen, hi, how you doing? Love your channel. Nathan Oakley sent me. Really enjoying your stuff. But he covers metal, he covers audio engineering, covers mics, does gear reviews, reads out very funny comments, talks about how idiot musicians do idiotic things. It's just funny. I love the guy anyway. I think Glen's great. But also, fuck you, Glen. It's not science. Hope you appreciate me making a video about you. I'm sure I'll get
Nathan,
you over the million so you can get your amp given away. But yeah, please subscribe to Glen. Go ahead, whoever that was.
Me. Adam Aiken wants you to let him in.
Oh, important stuff. Adam.
I'd like to know, when can you say that something's been scientifically verified or scientifically tested?
Perfect. Couldn't have asked for better timing. So once you have observed natural phenomena, that would be step 1 of the method. Formulated a hypothesis which establishes your presumed cause of the effect in the alternative, if A then B, and the antithesis, that would be the null hypothesis, if A not B, and all of the control variables, otherwise known as constant variables, and then you actualize your hypothesis, otherwise known as an experiment. That has to be done systematically, i.e. more than once. Once you have systematically validated the alternative, that would be your presumed cause of an effect, you have then scienced the shit out of it, if you so wish.
So testing what speaker sounds better or what washing liquid works better is not a scientific test.
That was my whole... I watched the vid, Nathan, when you sent it, and the whole supposition at the start would be that his dependent variable is it's sounding better. He then he uses that null thing to demonstrate a way of things sounding better, but his whole dependent variable is primarily subjective, therefore can't be. So
well, he's got a further problem to that, actually. He's testing the null. He's breaking the cardinal rule. You never test the null in an experiment. So I say you've got a null at the antithesis of your prediction, if A then B. You're not testing the null. And his hypothesis, if you want to call it, is there's no difference. It doesn't make a change. So let's go forth and test the null that nothing happens. So he doesn't even have a phenomena. Even though the phenomena he doesn't have is man-made. So it's a clusterfuck.
Well, isn't he He's just doing an inverse of the scientific method. He's testing the alternative of someone else's supposition.
Yes, that's correct. Someone else has the supposition that valves cause better sound, and he's testing the null. Right, exactly.
No, he's testing their alternative.
Oh, what you're saying is he's jumping in as devil's advocate and saying, fine, okay, I'll tolerate that. So he's introducing the if A valves, then B better sound as his bastardized so-called hypothesis. Yeah, okay, I'll tolerate that.
Yeah, I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he understands science at all. But I think there is science to be had in what he's done.
What, in the sound you get out? By the way, cool gimbal, man. Moving the mic around on a remote control gimbal to show the difference on a sound it produces when you're miking up a cab. That was fucking epic. I'm sorry, but that was the coolest thing ever.
It just sounds like he's doing more troubleshooting than science.
Correct. So what's the naturally observed phenomena there, John, then? We're going to go back to sound.
The sound, yeah.
So we try to... So DV, dependent variable, naturally observed phenomena is going to be sound. So we're going to... In this removing and changing valves, we're trying to figure out the cause of sound, John.
Quality of sound.
Don't help him out.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Where you go with that? He's not trying to figure out the cause of sound.
Not the cause. Well, the cause of the quality of the sound.
The cause of the quality. That sounds distinctly qualitative. Strangely enough. Wow, that leaves me slightly screwed for the end of the show. Help! Adam.
Well, I ain't got vicious yet. It's going to get worse, but you can keep going.
Yeah,
I don't want to pretend it's science, but what he is doing is taking empiricism to improve his technology, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot to be gained, as you can see, by being empirical in the way you approach things. It helps him reach his conclusion of what sounds better quicker, and it also gives him data to validate it in his mind why it sounds better. It's more like a psychology experiment than anything, this, if you were going to put it in a box in terms of what he's actually doing, because he's not science.
Well, isn't he doing engineering? The refining of something?
There's a way in which he could science, what you were saying, which is just to look at how resonance patterns form through different tubes. I don't understand it, but just for example, you could examine how a wave pattern of the sound is preserved through different types of equipment, or the shapes of it, and you could then determine the best shape for preservation of sound things, of a sound wave. But what you can't do is determine what sound is, or fundamentally what he's doing, determine what sounds best, because like I say, that's subjective from the beginning.
Isn't that what his nullification instrument does, though?
We'll get into it in the after show. So with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Again, if you go and subscribe to Glen on Spectra Sound Studios, make sure you say Nathan Oakley sent me, and fuck you, Glen. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!